Good evening, everybody. A later start, which is kind of the normal start now. I had some laundry to do tonight. Now, it is a bit late, but I also don't have any plans for the weekend. So I'm going to try and do a full run for a stream. If I can't manage it, either feel tired. I do have some coffee in front of me. But if I start to feel fatigued, if it's not quite working, especially I know for Tyranny, if I start late enough, there's usually a bit of a cost in terms of viewership. On the other hand, I'm not entirely convinced that just keeping an eye on viewership is the right way to go about streaming a game. So if nothing else, I figure we could probably do some of the side quests, and then I can make some decisions as to whether or not it's a good idea to go and go a bit further in the main quest. I was talking with somebody in the last stream. I feel one thing that has been a nice side effect of Tyranny is I am slightly more inclined to trying Pillars of Eternity again. I don't know if I do it on stream, but I do feel like I kind of want to give it another shot and see if I can find what what other people saw inside of it. Now, if you can just give me a second, I should have been a little bit more prepared. I do just need to get one more thing put away from the laundry. So I won't put up the break sign or anything like that, but I am just going to leave you with the big brassy introduction sound for a little bit, and then we will hop into the game. Alright, sorry about that. So if I recall correctly, we've already rested up at the Spire, and we were on our way to checking out the Sage's... I always like the Spire music, incidentally. Alright, so if I recall correctly, we were doing... So right, sorry, we did also have... the fire inside. So the one we're not doing is extinguishing the flames. So Hidden Truths, Ruined Estate at the Bastard Tier, and then River's Break and Vendrian's Well. Okay, well, let's see. That is right on the way. Okay. Fair enough. Encounter in Vendrian's Well. Clouds hang low over the tiers, disgorging a deluge of rain, thunder shaking your bones as lightning arcs across the sky. You press on with your journey with the awareness that weather like this often complicates travel. This time, however, responsibility for the complication lies entirely with humans. The road crosses a river ahead, and someone, likely one of the tier's many warring factions, has sabotaged the crossing. The center of the bridge is entirely missing. Peering at the churning water, your disfavored companion rubs the back of his head. I'd suggest that I walk along the bottom were it not for the damnable need to breathe. Apologies, Fatebinder. My presence here may hinder your options. So we can repair the bridge, we can attempt athletics to push a boulder into the bridge gap, or we can find another route. Well, let's... You may have noticed that I like to go for the lore options just because it does level up my... It does sort of advance my character's lore points. So it's one of the main reasons why I try and push that as much as I can. Okay. At the foot of the bridge, you find a set of discarded tools and planks. They don't seem to belong to the saboteurs. Perhaps the locals had set out to repair the bridge before the storm came. Deciding you don't have time to wait out the weather, you take up a plank, hammer, and nails and get to work. It doesn't take too long for you to make a workable crossing. It won't hold up a cart, but it's enough to let you continue your journey. And everybody here has got a 5% bonus to precision because of focused. And looks like we got a new message on our way to the location. Okay, I'm going to read the... First of all, we're at the start of the stream. We're at the start of the stream after not playing the game for a day. And it looks like we're actually at the end of the Myothis exchange anyway, so it probably doesn't hurt to do the entire exchange, although I know it'll be a long one. Quill in hand, you loom over a blank sheet of parchment. You have Fatebinder Myothis contact information in hand and contemplate your opening words. Dear Fatebinder Myothis, I write to you at the urging of my peer and tutor, Fatebinder Rogulus. He has found himself bereft of answers, a rare condition for him, and suggested you may be the only source of the answers I seek. If you will pardon the imposition, it would mean a great deal to learn what you know of Kairos' edicts and the magic of the spires. The mountain spire of the Tears has awoken to my presence, an event that occurred moments after I resolved an edict of Kairos, so it's critical that I learn just what has happened to me and what it all means. I thank you in advance for your consideration and wisdom. Solon, do you remember your training under Bled and Mark? I remember mine. Funny to think that you and I are about a century apart, but to Bled and Mark, we are all children. I am now the oldest of the court's children, and I've seen much in my time. It's probably for the best that everyone assumes I'm old, harmless, and worth shuffling away in the archives. If I were scrutinized too closely, I'm sure Tunon would find I've grown lax in my spoiled old age. Part of why I am here is that I've kept my head down. You appear to be doing the opposite. In some regards, this is beyond your control. You were chosen for the honor of proclaiming Kairos' edicts twice. To decline would have meant death, but to accept means to be placed on the stage for all to see. Kairos' most powerful weapon is not the edict, it's her ability to hand us rope that we willingly use to hang ourselves. Never forget this. There are numerous questions nestled in your request. What is it you wish to know most? Focus your inquiry, and I will answer as best I can. Fatebinder Myothis. Dear Myothis, thank you for hearing me out. I have more questions than I have ink, but let's start with a discussion of Kairos' edicts. I've lived under, proclaimed, and resolved edicts, which makes me far more knowledgeable than the layperson on the subject, and yet I still know so little. Solon. Salutations, Solon. It is difficult to separate fact from superstition when it comes to edicts, as it seems only Kairos knows how it all works. The rest of us are left to live in fear and ponder it all. Kairos' edicts are a sort of magic above and beyond even the Archons. I dare say the edicts are stronger than Kairos, as there is no evidence Kairos can willingly stop an edict once it's set into motion, which is, in part, why Kairos' edicts seem to have an until or unless clause in their wording. I know the edict, as powerful as it is, requires a human voice to complete the casting. Thus the Overlord has people like you proclaim edicts cast far from the imperial throne. The magic is Kairos magic, but the human voice is the final carrier or trigger to complete the magic phenomenon. And here's what's most fascinating, at least as far as you're concerned. There have been dozens of mortal agents who have been made to proclaim edicts. 2/3 of them die within a decade, and many give reports of lingering magic scars from the ordeal. And there have been a handful to resolve or break an edict. These until or unless clauses get fulfilled from time to time, and we see a similar pattern in history. Those who resolve an edict often live short lives, and many speak of arcane side effects of the shattered edicts. Here's where you're unique. To the best of my fact-finding, you are the first to proclaim and break the exact same edict. Whatever mystical power is involved in the creation and destruction of such magics, you're the first to stand at the terminus of both. Now that I know the spires can be awoken, it makes sense that if anything can or would wake them from slumber, a shattered edict seems the likely culprit. Kairos has other edicts in place throughout the tiers. If you truly wish to learn more, perhaps you should take it upon yourself to shatter those edicts. After all, if Kairos did not wish for the edicts to be broken, why include a termination clause? Myothis. Dear Myothis, it seems wise to know one's own domain, and seeing as I am now the master of the mountain spire, I ought to learn all that I can. If you would share with me what you know of the spires, I would be in your debt. I'll start with what I know and have observed so far. The mountain spires seem to be awoken at about the same instant that Kairos' edict of execution was put to rest. There was a burst of arcane energy that drowned out my senses, and I awoke at the summit of the spire in what seemed to be just a few heartbeats of time. Atop the spire is an old sculpture of sorts, and it seems to be the core of the spire's mystic energy. I've been seeing visions and receiving sensations from the sculpture. It seems odd to describe it as talking to me, but that seems the closest analogy. Am I the first to report such findings? There are other spires elsewhere in the world, correct? Greeting Solon. You are correct. There are spires all across Terratus. The exact distribution of these monuments fuels all sorts of debate and speculation, but two facts seem commonplace. Most spires are built near old walls. Your mountain spire is a notable exception. And nearly every culture that predated Kairos has some local myth to explain the builders of these spires. I believe the Tiersmen cite the Older Realms as their local name for the spire Old Walls architects, but nobody knows for sure. And of course, where Kairos has brought proper civilization, the origin of the spires simply isn't discussed in good company. Here's what I think you need to know. First, the spires behave as an arcane lodestone. There is a constant field of magical strength around a spire. If you imagine a mystic sea resting atop our world, the spires seem to spin and churn this magic. Creating a spell cast with even modest effort will materialize with powerful results. Second, and I'd say most tellingly, Kairos has laws against entering the old walls, but there are no laws against the spires. You could infer from this that means Kairos has no issue with lay folks messing with the spires, but wishes to keep us safe from the old walls. Or you could think like an overlord and know that if you place a rule against something, you make it forbidden and desirable. Now I find it telling that Kairos forbids the hallways that lead to the spires, but does not paint a target on the spires themselves. Last but not least, as a young Fatebinder, I once had to oversee the case of a man who had built a shrine to Kairos around the base of a spire in the southeast. I could find no evidence of falsity or slander. His shrine was the most reverent and loving tribute as I've ever seen. At one point, though, this man claimed he had evidence that Kairos was here back in -50. He had merely uttered those words, and my senior binder swung the axe then and there. Being the new girl at the court, I said nothing, but I have long wondered why such a comment should require death instead of the traditional removal of the tongue. Fatebinder Myothis. Dear Myothis, I appreciate the information. Thank you for sharing. Knowing what you know of my situation, what would you do? Dear Solon, based on what you've told me, it seems a stretch to believe these events are mere coincidence or circumstance. Kairos' edict of execution was a setup for someone to claim Ascension Hall. To think that Kairos did not know what would happen is a massive underestimation of the Overlord's long view. You have been thrust into the arena of the mighty. Your options are retreat into obscurity, suicide, or rising to the occasion. I suggest the third option. If I were you, I would use my connection to the spires to see if they will all awaken to my presence. Every Tiersman sees the spires in the horizon. If they know you are the master of the spires, they will see you each time they look to the sunrise or sunset. Foster a reputation for power. Make others fear you. This is what I've seen Kairos and every living Archon do for as long as I've lived, and there's reasons for this. There's the practical case that power and a reputation insulate you from threats, but there's the lesser-known element that I can't prove but know in my heart to be true. The fear and love of others will strengthen your magic. The last part I've inferred from my discussions with Bledan Mark. In the few times he has spoken of his gruesome work of slaying those who might rise to threaten the Overlord, he has hinted that it's easier to kill the rogue elements before they become famed and fearsome. In my lifetime, I saw Graven Ash change from an unknown militiaman to a fearsome general, and I can assure you he did not have the power to shield his warriors in those days when he was without title or reputation. The Archons will never ever discuss the origin of their power, because such knowledge might be used against them, but I have known all the Archons to be obsessed with the presentation of power. Your connection to the Spires will all but guarantee the Archons will want to control and destroy you. It's a question of when, not if. Start thinking and acting like an Archon. As far as I'm concerned, you are an Archon, the Archon of the Spires. We are quick to place labels on powers we easily spot, and history is replete with Archons of fire and ice. It is foolish to think that there must be a word for a thing before an Archon can control it. Other way around. The Archons show us what is possible, and we must step to their dance. Myothis. Dear Myothis, your wisdom on the matter is greatly appreciated. You made mention of Bledan Mark and his killings. During my training, Fatebinder Callio hinted that much of Bledan Mark's work involves killing off threats before they blossom into genuine problems, so it's curious to hear you second the fact. So, let's say for the sake of argument I am some Archon. Is it just a matter of time until Bledan Mark is sent to kill me? Should I be making grand displays of loyalty to the court to assuage his suspicions? So long. My dear Fatebinder, it's a poorly kept secret that Bledan Mark's job is more about killing threats before they become a problem. Official executions are really the minority of his duties. As I understand it, Kairos has long used Bledan Mark as a preventative measure. Since he can move about the world rather freely, and he can evade all but the most absurd powers, he's a perfect predator to send against wild talents. I'm sure few in the tiers have ever actively wondered why there have been seemingly so few Archons born this far west. I'm sure folks with the potential to be Archons have occurred in the tiers time and time again, but they're usually cut down by Mark before the world hears of them. It's likely safe to assume Bledan Mark has his eye on you and has orders to use his own judgment as to when to strike. I've known the old man for ages, and I'd strongly encourage you not to try to appeal to him with overt displays of loyalty. He has no stomach for sycophants. I sincerely believe he thinks every human being is a selfish, twisted knave, and that there are those who are lying about it, and those who accept what they are. No third type exists. So yes, I do think Bledan Mark will one day have to come for you. As I said, you could always hide or end your life now, but where you're headed, conflict is likely inevitable. Myothis. Dear Myothis, I appreciate the insight and am honored by your vote of confidence. Your missive made mention of Graven Ash and how you've known him since before he wore the title Archon of War. Can you tell me more about what you've observed of his rise to power? If I am indeed an Archon, it's safe to say I wasn't born knowing what I can or can't do, and it stands to reason I might learn something from the stories of the other Archons. Solon. This is the sort of question that can get you killed. Very little is known about how Archons are born or come to power, and my long life has taught me that Kairos and the Archons prefer it that way. If the young and the talented remain forever in the dark, the old and mighty can rule without challenge. I heard of Ash, he will always be merely Ash to me, before Kairos renamed him and gave his legion that backhanded title, as a rebel, a grimy, illiterate partisan who was winning battles while his countrymen in the Northern Kingdom lost left and right. Ash was always a good leader, but he wasn't born able to mystically reach out and protect his soldiers. The earliest mention of it isn't even until the tail end of the Northern Conquest, And if you read the journals, they don't tell stories of grievous harm warded off by Ash's stern looks. Instead, they talk of his soldiers finding their fears and doubts lifted from them by Ash's presence. A careful reading suggests the ability to actively protect physical harm came years later, as that bond grew, and more importantly, as his legend grew. The legend part is the key detail. In my understanding, an Archon's power is something of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The widespread perception of an Archon's power is the very thing that strengthens an Archon's power. So in Ash's case, he has some early inkling of a power, the ability to assuage the burdens of his men, and as he took on the mantle of power and became known all around Terratus as the next Archon of war, it soon became the ability to bear the physical burdens of his men, not just their fears and doubts. Thus my advice to you is to act like an Archon. Take power where you can find it. Foster fear, foster love. Never walk through life anonymously, but rather live in the thoughts of your followers and the anxieties of your enemies. Myothis. Dear Myothis, thank you for weighing in on all this. To ask perhaps too obvious a question, if I am such an anomaly, such a threat, why hasn't the Overlord dealt with me right away? An edict or just a simple request to Bled and Mark would be no small threat. Neither seems to have happened just yet. What's your take on this? Why hasn't Kairos dealt with me? Archon Solon. Allow me to address you by such a title before it becomes fashionable to do so. I pride myself as a woman who stays ahead of the trends. Why Kairos smites some but allows others to exist is a question we all ponder. The Overlord can certainly appear arbitrary, and if I've learned anything, that's the point. Kairos is intentionally aloof and distant, both for matters of personal security and because if you had to wrangle the most powerful entities of Terratus, you'd need to keep them from getting too comfortable. To me, the most obvious answer is that Kairos knows exactly what you are doing. She probably approves of your actions and is likely working at every opportunity to create a situation wherein you are acting in your own self-interest while satisfying her ambitions as well. You have to consider one important detail. There's nowhere left in Terratus to conquer now that the Tears are in the Overlord's grasp. What would the great generals even do in a time of peace? The voices of Narat is barely tolerable when you have need of a spy master. Why keep around such a monster when you no longer have need of such a gruesome weapon? I would argue it is in Kairos' interest that the Tears be a costly invasion that claims the lives of as many Archons as possible. Not enough meat on the Tears to keep too many sharks sated for very long. Kairos ordered everyone to take Ascension Hall or die. The or die must have been an acceptable option, correct? If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say you have the unspoken backing of the Overlord. It's not like Bled and Mark can't find you wherever he wants. Myothis. One of the things I didn't appreciate in the earlier text, where it sort of talked about live through the thoughts of your followers and the anxieties of your enemies, is more or less describing the favor and wrath mechanic. At some point, I do want to put some more points into the lore, but we're good for now. I want to follow through on... I want to follow through on the first mission. Dry grass protrudes haphazardly around the threadbare and sun-bleached tunic hanging on this post. The glower painted on the burlap sack painted on the burlap sack head glares down over a rough grass beard. It bears a passing semblance to a certain Archon of secrets. The scents of baked bread and vegetable stew mingle on the air. Through the window you can make out a modest dwelling, kept with the kind of order and cleanliness one would expect of a disfavored command tent. An older woman tends to a small but verdant patch of farm, Plump gourds and vegetables of vine and root vie for soil and light with a fig tree, its branches drooping with what passes for abundance in the tears. The farmer notices your approach and takes up her shovel as if it were a spear, favoring her left arm with a wince. Careful, stranger. I'm no easy mark, and have little worth your time or blood. A few errant strands of thick gray hair, loosed from the band that tames the rest, frame her deeply lined face. She may be old enough to be my mother, but she holds herself like a warrior trained. Who are you? Or, no, let's say, nice farm. Thank you for your kindness. We're shared with my husband before he died. Not much to look at, but kept the family fed. The woman's lips tighten. Compliments ain't answers, though. I ask again, what brings you here? She jumps slightly with the shovel. Who are you? I'm the woman who tills this soil, mends these walls, and protects them with her blood. I'm supposed to be here. You're the ones who should be announcing themselves. She points the shovel's edge at you. Feisty. I like this old coot. Verse grins. Hey, Vanguard Master. Girl, this old coot has split skulls twice as thick as yours. Good hearing, too. We seek Clea. Clea? Clea was my youngest. Why are you asking after her? She lowers the shovel slightly, her eyes widening slightly at the name. Was? Shit, don't tell me we're too late. I'll have you keep a civil tongue in your head, girl, while you're on my land. She jabs her shovel in Verse's direction, as if she could seal the Fury's mouth with it. Sorry, ma'am. Verse blinks in surprise at her own words. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. What happened to Clea? She narrows her eyes, her fingers tightening protectively around the shovel. First things first. Call me Essa, daughter of Vesperia, and this is my homestead, granted me by Queen Vendrian Alanta in honor of my service. She swings the shovel's head to encompass the small plastered house and the abutting field. That's an introduction. You got one to match? I'm Solon, Fatebinder of Tudon, the Adjudicator. Essa's blue eyes widen in recognition. You're the one who ascended the mountain spire. They say you hung a banner woven of golden light from the battlements. Wouldn't have believed a word of it if I hadn't seen the glow from here. She shakes her head. What's a Fatebinder want with the likes of me? I ain't broken the Overlord's laws. Essa crosses her arms. Follow your lead, Verse. I'm sorry, Essa, but Irissa has died. Verse frowns down at her scarred hands, then glances away. Irissa, dear girl. Dear, stupid, blind, foolish, arrogant girl. A sob racks her shrunken frame. How'd it happen? She died in Stalwart, aiding the Unbroken against the forces of Kairos. It's my fault. I raised those girls on the romance of war, on tales of bloodying the bastard Tyr and pushing back Azure. How was I to know your armies would come in their lifetimes, that the gates of judgment wouldn't hold, or that you'd stride into the Tyrs with a man of stone who could step clean over a curtain wall? Even girls like mine couldn't stand against Kairos. There ain't been nothing like that in Northern Shadow before, able to crush mountains and call earthquakes from a scrap of vellum. There ain't no fighting that, I told them. They didn't listen, damn them. Of all the damn fool things I told them, the only thing they didn't hear was what mattered. She shudders out a sigh. You say you trained your daughters in the arts of battle? Aye, their father were a good man, but more suited to farm work than war. She looks up sharply. If you were looking for someone to blame, I'd be that person. I trained them up, taught them the falx, the javelin, the spear and shield. Aye, they used that knowledge against your precious Archons and their armies. Hey, Essa, maybe you'd like to shut the fuck up now? Verse's lower lip twitches. What did you teach them about the Overlord? There's never been a graver threat to Alteritas, that Kairos represents the worst of the powers of man or woman, that such an evil must be resisted at all costs, and by any means necessary. What? That directly contradicts what you said before. I changed my tune in my older, softer years, but as they growed up, I poisoned them against Kairos as thoroughly as if I had carved it upon their hearts. Do you use all this food yourself, or have you sold it to other people in the well? I sold some for rings and without a Kairos damned license too. So you admit to violating Kairos' laws in front of a chronicler? Well, young lady, this is going in the permanent record. Hey, geriatric voyeur, you ever considered shutting your flapping gums? Vers rubs her brow. Anything else you want to tell me, Essa? Naming a child for Kairos is a capital offense, ain't it? I imagine naming a pig for Kairos ain't no better. Care to meet Kairos the Overpig? He's around back. You see what's happening here, don't you, Binder? Vers sighs, her shoulders sagging. I've come to a decision in this matter. What matter? There's no matter here, Binder. Please tell me you're not going through with this. This is your dance verse. Pick the tune. Quiet scraping sound issues from Barrack as he watches wordlessly. Really? Verse takes a step back, blinking rapidly. Considering her options, Verse sheathes her weapon and nods. We came here because Irissa, she killed one of my sisters. I always thought I needed to avenge them, to make it right because I'd failed them. But actually talking to you, it's cleared some stuff up. I guess what I'm saying is I miss my sisters, and you miss your daughters, and that's just the way of things.
Who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
Essa nods numbly, turns and shuffles towards her squat farmhouse. Verse releases a long sigh, bends down, and plucks a round red tomato from a vine. Her thumb slides across its skin, and then presses lightly against it, dimpling the vegetable. She tosses it from hand to hand and turns to you. Irissa and Clea are dead. What does that mean for your sisters?
I'm sure Whispers would have something clever to say about frustrated ambitions.
Verse shakes her head and chuckles darkly.
You ever have a friend who almost never speaks? But then, every once in a while, she slips in the perfect word at the perfect time, and it's the only thing you remember. That was 3 Whispers. She was our wiry, flickering shadow with hair like crow's feathers. Preferred close-up work. That was her name, her 3 knives and the sound of air from a punctured lung. It's, hard to remember stories about her because she never drew attention.
And yet?
Her old favorite. That I remember. She'd trick a soldier into gutting his own comrade, then open his throat while he was in shock. Beautiful move, and I saw her dance it 12 times. Whispers knew her histories and letters, knew borders and houses and heraldry. Even knew a few sigils, and kept us from bleeding out more than once.
She runs a hand over one of her feathers.
Whispers and me, we were more than sisters sometimes. Not often, and nothing holding. But yeah, she read a body as easy as a scroll.
Some uncharacteristic hesitation on your part.
I didn't realize you knew me so well as to say what is and isn't like me.
She smirks, then shakes her head.
I enjoy killing, Fatebinder. Doesn't mean I think everyone deserves to die.
I'm assuming the sounds nice was to the line before.
Was nice.
Let's go.
Let's.
She bites into the tomato and a small bead of juice rolls down her chin. So I'm just going to wait for the stuff to cycle through. Okay. So, Verse is still primarily dual wield, which is quickness and finesse. Now, I've already maxed out finesse. I could also say probably dodge and parry would be good. Or is there a dodge? Yeah. So interestingly enough, it's the wits that seems most in line with... I don't know. Yeah, I'll do wits now, but I'm not 100% sure I feel good about that. All right, now Lantry, we've already put wits up to the maximum. Now lore is my usual... I could say control life. All right, so that is vitality. Really not sure how I feel about that. I think I'm going to content myself maxing the lore. Now, Lantry, we also started putting some points to try and... here we go, yeah. So you may want to go back to that old dungeon for the language. And then for verse, we can do Fury's Embrace, unleash a rapid flurry of strikes against a single foe. Each hit applies a damage over time effect, or calls to blood, melee critical, hits damage enemies near their target. Both tempting. I think I'm going to do blood calls to blood for the simple reason that it doesn't involve me actively managing another ability. And while I'm at it, let's just take a quick look and see if there's any anything else I can do with the new items I've picked up. So there were... Okay. Those are heavy. Okay. I'm not expecting too much out of this, but I would like confirmation rather than just assume. Yeah, so this is very, very tempting, but because it does have that slightly higher recovery, it's still not something I want to go ahead with. Now, oddly enough, I would potentially be willing to do the scavenger... switch out the scavenger level. Well, the disengagement defense is a bit of a drag though, so maybe not. Just a quick look at weapons. I don't think there's anything new for the one-handeds. Yeah, I think we'll just leave it there. So these may be useful to the other members of the party, but I'm not going to go back to the spires just for that. On to Hidden Truths. Crouched in the southern mountains of the Bastard Tier, these ruins are all that remain of a fortified estate that ended up perfectly positioned to serve as a second line of defense for the Tiers if Fort Threshold fell. It might have held for spans had it not been for the arcane might of the Archon of Stone. Take you 2 days, 9 hours, 15 minutes to complete your journey from River's Break to the Shattered Bastion. Find the sage that summoned you. Explore the ruins of the estate to find the whereabouts of Sage L that contacted you.
Right.
Though this may once have been the entrance to what passes for a grand estate in the Tiers, little remains of it now save shattered ruins.
Interesting.
I'll look at the heavy leather boots when we're done this screen. So I am going to need some money before too long. And I think, okay, we're just going to give them their space for a bit, because I imagine because they are a Scarlet Chorus,
Can't do that.
it's going to be a fight. At this point, I don't think it's inappropriate to buff up just in case a fight breaks
That's
out. A group of unkempt, filthy commoners huddle among a motley of barrels and boxes. The heavy stenches of sweat, stale food, and grass cling to the still air. The presumptive leader of the group stands as you enter and moves towards you, weapon in hand. The approaching woman's olive cheeks seem drawn and sallow. Dark circles shadow eyes that survey you before searching over your shoulder. Seemingly reassured by a brief inspection, she lowers her weapon slightly so that it's not pointed directly at your chest. Her muscles remain taut, however, her stance that of a veteran soldier ready to respond at the first sign of aggression. You didn't bring the chorus in with you, and if you were disfavored, you'd have loudly bragged about your pedigree already. So that leaves me wondering, just who are you? I'm Solander, Fatebinder of Tunon. And you are? A Fatebinder? Fantastic. Her tone suggests that's anything but. You're to kill us, or can we convince you to keep our presence secret from those chorus madmen? You still haven't told me who you are. She blinks rapidly. Right, I haven't. The name's Gwyneth. I'm the guide for this little band. Used to be more. Used to be a mercenary, but no one's offering coin for a blade anymore. If you weren't born north of the gates of judgment, there's nothing for a warrior save the cloths of crimson or a mass grave. Red or dead, as they say. She sighs. So I stopped warring, more or less. What do you want exactly? We need to get back inside the mountain. We'd come out. She falls silent for a moment, and a slight shudder runs through her. We come out to scavenge for supplies. When we got back, we found crimson assholes crawling all over the place. You live in a cave? Well, it wasn't our first choice of homes, but we've taken shelter in a nearby cave. While we were out looking for supplies, these chorus goons somehow buried the cave entrance with rubble. We could excavate a path, but not with chorus spears prodding our rears while we dig. Help us be rid of the scarlet shit stains, and we'll scrounge up some appropriate recompense. I know they've got one of your people up there, one of those creepy scout twins. Not sure how much help that is to you, but maybe keep it in mind if things get bloody. Will you help me with the course? As much as I'd love to make battle standards with some crimson scum, I've got too many wounded. I'll see what I can do. Thank you. Let us know when the gang is no longer a threat. You see a very old, broken section of the wall. There's a rope hanging down that has recently been used to scale it.
On the lookout.
The Scarlet Chorus refuse to let anyone freely explore the estate, convince or force them to lower the ramp, or find an alternate route through the area. Gwyneth has asked for your assistance in ridding the Shattered Basin of the Scarlet Chorus occupants. She claims that her group will help you access the cave in exchange for their aid.
Can't do that.
Interesting. So I think at this point, I'm going to have some kind of encounter with the chorus here, so... I'm going to see if I can head sort of through the main entrance first.
I'll take it.
I got it.
It's a few more than I was expecting. Crimson-clad gang before you has yet to notice your presence. Their focus rests solely on the balcony above, where a broad-shouldered man in battle-worn armor shouts down at them. "Who goes there?" "Who goes there? You know who we are, boss." Remain silent. "Apologies, stranger." He puts his hand to his brow as if shading his sight. "Can't make you out at this distance. I hardly know the voice of every child in the tiers." The gentle babble of laughter filters down from above. Oh, wonderful. Rolls the so-called butcher. You know him? Unfortunately, I thought he died in the taking of the bastard city. Perhaps that was wishful thinking. Wonder how he found this many wayward fools to follow him. "Child? For fuck's sake, Rolls, let us in already." "Is that... I'm sorry, is that you, Warbler? With your pretty voice, I mistook you for a little girl." "Yes, boss, it is I, Warbler, and our faithful crew. We've returned from a successful raid, catch in hand." "What's that? You're here to raid us? Hear that? Javelins, take aim." "What? Fine. If you're in a mood and want to play stupid games, we'll divide the spoils without you." "Oh, Warbler, we were having such good fun with you. Why did you have to make things so serious? There are a few things we never joke about in this gang, like sharing." "Are you shitting me?" "What's that you say? You want me to shit on you? That doesn't seem very clean, Warbler, but if that's what you want..." Another round of laughter from the other chorusman. "Need you further evidence of the chorus culpability for the problems at Vendrian's Well, Fatebinder?" "Everyone down here thinks that's real funny, boss. We'd really like to sit by the fire and have a decent meal." "I don't think you're getting in here, Warbler. Or were you planning on taking the fort from us?" "What? Don't put words in my mouth, you shallow sack of cock cheese." "I can talk however I desire, and if you can't take it, you aren't tough enough to run with our gang. In fact, I think we're overdue for a display of your worth." "Test of our worth? We just spent 4 days sacking the countryside for you. Now let us in already." "I don't recall ordering a raid. No doubt you've been recruiting your own gang and are here to defy me. Well, your mutiny ends here." "Mutiny? We've been loyal. My crew's been loyal. How dare you?" "Then who are your reinforcements?" Roll points a finger at you. "Or did you let the enemy shadow you back home? Either way, wrong move." "Huh?" He looks back at you, eyes widening. Where did you come from? It's the Fatebinder of Tunon, idiot. You know, the master of the Mountain Spire. His attention focuses entirely on you. Though now I'm curious, if Warbler didn't come crying to you, what brings you all the way out here? Fate binding. This must be the legendary Fatebinder sense of humor. Look, I'm more than happy to help you do with whatever task the Archon's got you doing, but first I need your help in dealing with the idiots down there. He points to the balcony. Points from the balcony at Warbler and his gang. A legend like you won't even break a sweat culling them. Are you fucking kidding me? I've broken no law. Just done what my boss told me. Stow it. The only meaningful law in the chorus is not suffering the weak, and you're weak. Fatebinder here is just going to thin the herd a bit. Meets your eye, ain't you? Prepare yourselves. Let the blood flow, Fatebinder. He claps happily, and his compatriots cheer your title. So long, Warbler. We won't miss you in the slightest. What did I do?
Champion!
The pathfinding again leaves much to be desired.
Not so fast. Good work.
Okay, let's try and get some order back here.
Consider it.
It's actually...
You're scouting out by your...
You got it.
Attention, kids. You might look.
You got it.
I'd have it no other way.
Try healing Verse. So I wanted to heal Verse first just because I know the Fatebinder has... Oh, sorry, Lantry's already got the protection on Barrack.
Get out, you little shit!
Cool.
I got it.
An absolute thing of beauty. Show me a fool who says the law dogs are all bark and I'll set him straight. He looks back to his men. Let's get this ramp down for our esteemed colleague of the court. With a screeching grind of metal on metal, the ramp pivots towards the lower floor.
I got it.
Satisfied, Rolls has lowered the ramp leading to the Scarlet Chorus camp. Speak with Rolls.
Can't do that.
Hey, over there.
The captive Oathbound's head rests between his knees. Frankly, Fatebinder, I had a bit of the nervous knees when you showed up, but you spilling Warbler's innards down shows me where you stand. I think you and I could establish quite the mutually beneficial relationship if you've got the mind for it. I'm listening. So a couple years back, Cairn came through and toppled this place with half an effort. He split the ground, ruined this here manor, and even cracked open the mountains while he was at it. So we didn't give a lot of thought to the cave when we first came up here, because who gives a lot of thought to a hole in the ground, right? But two of Warbler's kids wanted to go poke around inside and never came out. We sent in another two after them, and we never saw them again either. Don't know if something's taken residence in the cave, or if Cairn unleashed something from the depths, but I can't exactly start building an army to shake the tears if I've got that shit in my back, can I? So we collapsed the entrance. An army to take the tears? Yeah. This gang here is the start. Now that we're fighting the disfavored, this war's getting interesting again. And I need to do my part to help the chorus succeed. He smiles. Besides, it's our rule that the strong lead and the weak follow. Given my strength, I would be insulting the Archon by not gathering the largest gang I can muster. What does the voices of Narat think of this? You know, I haven't asked. The idea of something coming out of that cave to eat us while we sleep has gotten no more attractive with time. That's where you come in. Get that cave open and kill whatever's lurking in there, and you can come and go through this fort as you please. Set up camp here for all I like. And if that goes well enough, maybe we find other ways to help each other out. It's to stop me from killing you and taking this place for myself. Besides me, my blades, and my crew, I guess nothing. I'm trying to be cordial here, Fatebinder. You really want things to get ugly? How am I supposed to open a collapsed cave? Don't know. That's why I need your help. Fatebinder's no magic, right? I'll clear out the cave for you. Since you're assisting us, feel free to take a look around the place for anything that might help. Anything my crew isn't carrying or nailed down is fair game for you to swipe. His smile widens, displaying a bit too many of his crooked teeth. Good luck. Captive Oathbound's head rests... Oop. A man bound before you wears disfavored violet, crusted with patches of dried blood, the faint blue light of an Oathbound scout sigil shimmering unsteadily through a thick layer of grime. He watches you approach from under a lowered brow, his features sunken and dark. His right eye socket seems a bit darker than his left, as if he bears a near-healed bruise, and the sour scent of mingled sweat and urine wafts off from him. Fatebinder, he rasps and clears his throat. Apologies. Haven't had occasion to say much today. You recognize me? Could hardly forget the Fatebinder turned Harbinger, could I? We owe you a debt. I've no doubt the General has every intention of honoring it. I'm called Hyrax, son of Euperia, Oathbrother of Merrick, currently attached to the Fifth Boreal. No idea why you left that loudmouth lout Rhodes alive, though. He shifts against his bonds, wincing. Remedy that, and I'll provide you the intelligence I've found since I got here, the intelligence my people died for. I'll take care of those bonds for you. appreciate the sentiment, and normally I'd say risk it, but my arms were broken and neither set right. I'll need sawbones to break them again before they'll mend straight. So I can't fight for shit. If you free me, you'll lose any element of surprise you'd otherwise have. It's a bad play, whichever way you slice it. I'll see what I can do. He nods mutely. The chorus collapsed the entrance to the cave, blocking it with huge slabs of heavy stone. Clearing it by hand would be the work of a span or longer. They say you can flay a man with your words. I'd pay hard bronze to see that. These pathetic fools, they speak their weakness, and it becomes them. So there are enough elements present here that I'm happy to betray rolls. But I figure I might as well get whatever advantages I can before I... You see a very old, broken down section of the wall. There's a rope hanging down that has recently been used to scale it. Interesting. And apparently there's a place for me to pick something up that I haven't checked yet. I'm just noticing here. Oh.
Sorry, I can't.
So given that I'm going to start doing nasty things in a minute, it clearly makes sense to buff everybody.
Consider it done.
Okay, so I'm going to take Lantry and Verse off to the side. Barrack in the middle of things. So I guess the Fate Binder's got to be in. Thanks for offering to help us with our cave problem. Make yourself at home while you're here. Actually, I'm here to kill you. You're siding with them? Fuck to arms, maggots. Get this law dog ass lick.
Enough.
I will end.
Consider it done.
So it seems like there's some kind of silence on the team.
You got it.
I may do an early heal. Yeah, it's a spellcasting block, so not looking great on that front. Although it doesn't seem to be affecting the Fatebinder.
On it.
Okay. Definitely losing...
Will do. I got it.
That's a start.
Built for this sort of violence. Pay attention.
Will do.
Kids, you might learn something. I can't.
Not good.
Feel my...
You got it.
You'll have.
On it.
Okay, so one thing I can do is probably taunt with Barrack to try and get a little pressure off the Fatebinder.
Take me if you can.
Good God.
I will aid you.
Really thought I'd be able to get that finished. All right.
Self together.
I expect us to win still. It's just a few more casualties than I was expecting. Definitely crowd control is one of the things I struggle with the most on these. There's something profoundly wondrous in outliving your enemies. He grins. Something feral in the way his lips curl over his eye teeth. Get those ropes off me, and I'll tell you why I'm out here. Thank you, Fatebinder. Hyrax straightens as you release him, then stretches, his joints cracking loudly. He scowls at his arms, which were obviously badly broken and have healed, twisted by his bonds. Appreciate the aid. My team wasn't the first Iron Guard Alcos sent to this estate. The others never reported back. We were dispatched to recover whatever was left of them, but we found precisely nothing. No gear, no evidence of a fight, nothing that seemed a sign left for other disfavored to find. Then Rolls hit us, at night by surprise, like a motherless coward. We had set watch, obviously, but one of his mages did something to Corex that kept him from calling out. It was the pain of him burning that woke me and the others. The only reason we were able to kill the chorusman we did. He shudders and releases a sigh. No one else survived. Only the General's grace saved me. We canvassed the area pretty thoroughly before Rolls showed up. Only place we'd stayed out of was the cave in the back. The hole scared Rolls shitless, though, so he had it closed up. He looks towards the jumbled pile of stone to the north. Wish we'd gotten a chance to check in there for the first crew. Then at least I'd have something to take back to the Iron Hearth. The Oathbound locks his eyes on yours. Fatebinder, you're said to be a close ally of the General, so there's something you need to know. We had a secondary objective out here, the original reason that Ironhearth dispatched the first squad to this backwater. The Legion lost track of an Earthshaker out here a few spans back. Chances are he went as rogue as his Archon before him. We can't have every Tearsman's mother hurling boulders at us, so if he's not dead, he needs to be. He nods. You're our only chance of making that happen now. You know what I know, Fatebinder. I need to return to Ironhearth and report in. He looks at his arms and get these limbs straightened out. No enjoyment in that, I promise, but at least it'll distract me from everything else. Grayman Ash protects. That he does. If only he could do more. Farewell, Fatebinder. With a final glance at you, the Oathbound walks away. So I do want to open this. I also want to rest. You don't exactly work quiet, do you? I suppose that ruckus means it's all taken care of, clean and tidy? They're gone. How do you plan on getting into this cave of yours? There's always a chance we'd get stuck out here, that the mountains would move again, or, Kairos forbid, Cairn would come back to finish what he started. So one of our specialists, he cooked up an alchemical compound called Ocean's Fire. Burns as fast and hot as a Wrathcaster's spell. Set correctly, it'll clear the cave entrance out in an instant. But if it gets bumped wrong, say with some idiot chorus conscripts, we all meet the void well charred. Give me the ocean fire. I'll see to the cave entrance. Her sigh reveals profound relief, and she accompanies it with a nod. Thank you. Be extraordinarily careful with it. You don't want to be within 20 paces when the paste meets the air. Hunker down behind some rubble up top, then lob it at the cave entrance. She reaches into one of the crates and pulls forth an unpainted clay pot. She passes it to you with extreme gentleness, and you note that its lid is sealed with a thick ring of melted wax. Oh, and don't miss. The chorus collapsed the entrance to this cave, blocking it with huge slabs of heavy stone. Clearing it by hand would be the work of a span or longer. Expose the jar of ocean fire to the air, starting its ignition process.
I've got it.
I have not played the Pillars of Eternity games Well, sorry, that's not entirely true. I started playing them. And the funny thing is that I actually enjoy this quite a bit more than Pillars of Eternity, but this has made me want to reevaluate and make an effort to go all the way through. So there were a few things that actually pushed me away from Pillars of Eternity, and a few people who've seen me do this stream have heard these stories, so I'll try and keep it somewhat concise. What brought me to Tyranny initially? Well, I've always sort of felt that the Bronze Age is a really interesting... it's a really interesting opportunity for settings for lots of different games. I feel it's one that's relatively underutilized. I was sort of interested enough in the sort of premise of... I didn't know, the full details, but sort of the seemingly, Judge Dredd... the Bronze Age Judge Dredd was sort of an interesting enough angle on it. And I definitely don't I don't dislike this kind of game. So there was just enough indicating that it might have sort of sanded down some of the stuff that I didn't care as much for Pillars of Eternity, that I'd give it a shot. Now, I did play it on release, and just other stuff got in the way, so I never finished it. This is actually the furthest that I've played. But one of the things that I had a bit of trouble with for Pillars of Eternity is it very obviously wants to create its world. One of the things that I'm going to do here is that I'm going to give the contrast between Pillars of Eternity and Tyranny and why one worked for me and the other didn't. Pillars of Eternity very obviously wants to set up its world, and it's actually not. It's not even the case that it's not an interesting world. But one of the challenges that I felt it ran into was that it really insisted on having special names for things that seem to have very common sense meanings today. So, for instance, the one example I usually like, yeah, exactly. Like one of the examples that I kind of take for this is, so far as I can tell, there are dukes in the setting. However, they spell Duke D-U-C, and it genuinely took me some time, and I noticed for a lot of these things, I was having these moments of doubt of like, it seems like it's a duke. Maybe I should treat him like a duke, but I don't know. Why would they give a special spelling if it was, if it was something, if it was the same thing from today. And what it means is that I feel like I may be missing something in the setting, and so I don't know where to focus my attention. And where this really betrayed me was, apparently I didn't know, when you could sort of see into the souls of people and see those past stories, I did not realize that that was completely optional content that was written by backers. And I spent so much time with that, trying to find out how that was related to the game. And so if you take that, if you combine sort of the special, if you combine the special names for ordinary things, what it means is that I'm constantly measuring the game, trying to find like at what point I'm going to be quizzed on this information. And so instead of sort of letting this interesting setting and story sort of wash over me, I kind of, I was just at a point where it felt like homework, and I wasn't really having a good time in it. It felt like a little bit of a chore going through. And I will say, like, while I do like these styles of games, I definitely feel that the direction that more modern games have taken works a little bit better for me. So, for instance, Larian's kind of the one to beat in terms of the modern CRPG. And I quite like its turn-based system, and it seems to be a reasonably well-thought combat system. I will grant, like, the first Divinity Original Sin game really does feel like you need to play in a very narrow path that the developers had intended, particularly on sort of tactician mode and above. But in general, I think the turn-based nature and the ability to sort of adapt the combat to some of your different characters' features, that really works for me to a point where I do find it enjoyable to be in combat in those games. Whereas in the Obsidian CRPGs, it's not necessarily that I dislike it, but I definitely feel in some cases that the combat winds up being one of these things where I'm enjoying the game despite it. So anyways, all of that to say, when you compare this with Tyranny, I know it's not a game that's particularly well reviewed, and it definitely didn't sell as well as Pillars of Eternity. It's not that this is like bad or that this had like terrible reviews, but I know people feel like the ending was quite rushed, and I haven't gotten to the ending yet, so I don't have an opinion on it. But if you think about the world of Terratus and the different settings, the way it introduces that, when you are introducing new terms or new like new hierarchies or orders of things. Like specialized terms mean special things. So Tyranny is not the only game to have archons. I think archons go as far back as like Gnosticism. And obviously it's not a Gnostic archon, but you know, the game introduces the Archon. You know, they're a step below the Overlord. They have powerful magic, and that powerful magic sort of, you know, allows them to do unique things that are tied to their specific status. So Graven Ash has a different power from the Voices of Nerat, and so on and so forth. All of that sort of established early on. Doesn't it like it has its own term, and you're good to go, right? I'm not second guessing whether DUC means something different from DUKE. And I did also think that starting the game with the final conquest of Terratus was kind of interesting, because that also sort of eases you into the setting and the lore, and like this idea that iron is, you know, I guess in this world, like technological advancement is basically magic, right? That you can only create iron weapons when you have access to a certain type of spell casting. You know, the idea of edicts are really interesting. The idea that the Archon and the Overlord's power is very much tied to the belief that they have this power. So in this case here, right, you can see things that I think a lot of people really like about Pillars of Eternity, and I think I can see myself liking about Pillars of Eternity, but ultimately the game just put fewer obstacles in the way of me enjoying it. So, you know, in this case here, when I run into a rough patch with combat, like particularly the pathfinding just drives me to absolute distraction. But I can get over that because I'm sufficiently invested in the story of the Fatebinder and the ultimate fate of Terratus in a way that I sort of feel like I'm still trying to find my feet even further in the in Pillars of Eternity. The other thing is I do have the White March, so I don't know. I think I wound up in some areas where I had to be a higher level than I actually was, and that's always a bit of a drag. But yeah, anyways, that was longer than I'd intended. But it sounds like we had very similar experiences with Pillars of Eternity and Tyranny. I'm very happy that I've gone further in Tyranny because it's given me enough to sort of say, you know, Obsidian clearly can deliver on a good experience like this. And because I have, I have a little bit better understanding of what they're trying to do, and I know some of the stuff that I bumped into and didn't enjoy in Pillars of Eternity, I can sort of work my way around those. And hopefully, I do own both Pillars of Eternity and Pillars of Eternity 2. And so I'm hoping that when I finish Tyranny, I'm going to be able to go back to Pillars of Eternity with maybe a little bit more of an open mind, and hopefully some of those stumbles won't be as big of a challenge as they were before. And Runs says, CRPG vet, and I eventually turned the combat down to easy because I just don't want to focus on that so much. Just want to enjoy the CRPG experience of clicking and reading. That's where I found my juice. Yeah, so the funny thing is, for a lot of games, I do actually enjoy... sorry, I'll be out of the pause. I was originally going to take a break, but we can push that back a little bit. There are definitely some games that I enjoy playing on the higher difficulty, and like sometimes it's just fun to have the challenge, but I am definitely finding for a game like this, the strengths definitely seem to be in some of the storytelling. So, and like, just to be honest, I don't care enough about, using a whetstone or eating before combat or any of these little things. Like, I don't know anything about the details in terms of how combat works in this game, and it's just not where the interest lies to me. The interest lies in the world. And so I kind of feel like good at video games is not an interesting character trait, right? Like, I'm not going to put that on a dating bio or something. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't quite see where the value in that lies. I mean, again, these are very talented game designers who are very experienced making this kind of game. So it might just be that this is a matter of taste for me, but because of the enjoyment that I get from exploring the world, once combat starts feeling like an impediment to that, Again, I feel like if the only reason you're playing on a higher difficulty is, so you've got your internet points or something like that, it's, it's self-defeating. Whereas, if I'm going to play something like XCOM, XCOM, I'm not that good at. I wouldn't necessarily play it on the maximum difficulty, but the enjoyment of sort of getting that 1 in a million flank and sort of working your way out of a very difficult situation is incredibly rewarding. And, maybe you want to see how the story of the alien invasion ends, right? There's, especially in the second one, they do make sure that there are some story elements that, in my view, are like Shen's Last Gift is a good example where I think they do a good job of telling a story. But the thing that's driving that game really is you're feeling like you are a commander, driving your team towards both a tactical victory and then, to a lesser extent, that broader strategic level in the game. And so, in that case, the amping up the difficulty can just sort of enhance that feeling of reward in a way that in the case of the Obsidian games, while I think they're very strong in some respects, very often the combat feels like an impediment to the things that are driving the game. Yeah, no, I think that's a really fair assessment, Run. And like, to be honest, like, I do think it's a shame that the sequel didn't do that well. I imagine it's probably why Obsidian's now owned by Microsoft. But I think there definitely seemed to be something about, like, people did have a certain kind of rose-tinted view of these games, and I think they just kind of realized that they just needed that one hit to sort of remind them, as opposed to really bringing the genre back. And I think that's why the Larian stuff is so successful by comparison. And I do now have Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2, well, basically all the old all the old Black Isle stuff. So the first 2 Baldur's Gates, Icewind Dale and Planescape Torment. They're like a bundle. And I do fully intend to go through the Baldur's Gate games, but with the benefit of the conventions of modern game design, I really do appreciate that it can be a struggle to go through them. And I obviously understand their important place in game history, and I understand, BioWare, it's the game that made BioWare. I actually grew up in BC, so I actually have an old school BioWare shirt. So like MDK, Baldur's Gate, like all of those logos on it, the old BioWare logos on it. Just found it in a thrift store. I guess it's vintage now, but like I just found it in a thrift store because presumably somebody moved from Edmonton to where I was growing up. But yeah, like it's one of these ones where I kind of want to play through them so I can appreciate that that style of game, and even go earlier. So I'm sure I'll try Fallout at some point too. But I am definitely more of the opinion that thank you very much for the follow. I'm definitely of the opinion that it's I don't think it's necessary to pretend that there hasn't been development in games, and so to recognize that the enjoyment of these games may be lesser by the comparison, while still also finding this style of game interesting enough and wanting to understand the influences of a lot of the games that I really enjoy to sort of go through them. But again, it's exactly like the sort of stuff we're talking about here. Lower the difficulty. I kind of want to play a mage in Baldur's Gate, and I fully understand that when the assassin comes to try and get me, I better hope that I've saved, because that is a merciless game to low-level mages and stuff like that. So, but yeah, Planescape Torment, so far as I can tell, is absolutely the one to play, and I'm looking forward to playing it. So. All right, luminescent mushrooms dot the cavern's floor, emitting a disquieting glow without providing much in the way of illumination. Oh dear.
I will aid you.
I got it.
The shadows sift before you in hulking masses of darkness. As they step closer, the pale luminescence of the cave fungi highlights blunt, bony features. Lips curl back over yellow fangs and violet gums, and sinewy muscles tighten as the beast's clawed fingers spread open. Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's... I figure a game like this is not the sort of thing where people are like expecting constant engagement, and I think one of the things, or sorry, constant like engagement with the main game. And I think one of the things that is the most valuable about these games are to talk about, you know, the different ideas behind them that make you excited, right? And sometimes that can be there's a really great twist, and you want to share that moment with everybody. It can be the things that you find interesting in the setting, and I've felt a little uncomfortable with what passes for game criticism, particularly on things like YouTube, because I think people mistake it for just doing some variation of, yeah, I don't like that. And my hope here is that, you know, when I talk about some of the things that didn't work for me in Pillars of Eternity, it doesn't come off as a story where, you know, I'm trying to convince people that they don't like something that they really do enjoy. Or at the very least, I hope that people feel like I'm trying to engage with the game on its merits, and so that even if it's not necessarily a positive or an overall positive view of the game, that, you know, at the very least someone who really enjoys it can sort of give a bit of a nod and say, it's like, I can see where you're coming from on that. So, you know, I think to me, being able to say, I've seen a few sort of reviews of Pillars of Eternity, and it's like some equivalent of like, well, this game sucks. And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't suck. And I feel like it's a little more productive to be able to turn around and say, you know, I really want to like this interesting world that's been set up. And then to, you know, say, and here are the things that this game does that are stopping me from enjoying that world. In that case, it's a sort of thing that I feel like somebody who wants to develop a CRPG might actually sit down. And I know Vanguard Master's in the channel, so he's a game developer. You know, I can imagine a game developer saying, is like, oh, that's interesting. So when I want to show people a special world, here are the things that didn't work for this game, even though it was well reviewed. And then, of course, you think about the speaker. You know, maybe the speaker is somebody who's just not suited for these types of games, because obviously Pillars of Eternity and by extension Tyranny was really attempting to capture that feeling of the old Black Isle games. But, you know, again, if you're just banking on nostalgia, you probably want to make sure that you're exercising some degree of cost control and that you've really hooked into those communities, because there's only so far. It'll only take you so far. There's a lot of, you know, even quite good indie games that are making appeals to nostalgia. And the thing is that if you're just creating an SNES experience in 2025, you can't really expect people to pay, you know, $20 for something like that, because there are 2025 experiences available for $20 that reflect more modern conventions. Another human. The largest of the figures steps forward, revealing herself as a heavily muscled beast woman covered in rust-colored fur. Her yellow gaze narrows intensely upon you, nostrils flaring to drink in your scent. Does you new human offer man-flesh to Hillstrider's pack? Crying leather-clads offer more bone than meat. Made short meals for beast woman. You ate the people who came before? Beast woman wastes no meat. Not even human meat. She scratches her belly with a satisfied grin. I opened your cave for you. It seems to me some gratitude is in order. Does human think moving stones would make Hillstrider ache with rutting desire? She chuffs, heavy dugs bobbing with her laughter. Beast woman has seen strength of many and great acts of war and hunt. Is not so easily impressed. You will let us through, or we will tear your arms from your sockets and cobble boots from your hides. She takes a step back, then dips her head lower than her shoulders. Hillstrider knows gratitude. If human cleared piled stones, then Hillstrider supports. Human may pass. Her packmates step to either side, opening a path. Come, go. Harm no one. The funny thing is, I imagine I probably get a bit more... probably get more experience if I fight these things. The stone formation quietly hums a slowly modulating melody. Its tune reminds you of the Archon of Song. So Run says, Gisette says, gaming such a trip, I could go so deep into the philosophical side of it, but the short of it is that so many people are always trying to replicate the feeling they had when they played video games from ages 12 to 18, when these worlds and so on really transported us. And it turns out that it can never really be done. As they say, you can't go home again. No, I think that's a really, really fair way of putting it. And I haven't appreciated, I mean, like, sometimes... I imagine at least some of this stuff is just gamers kind of, you know, confronting the passage of time, right? I think that's kind of what you're describing there. And so I'm not as involved with the GOG stuff as I used to be, but there's definitely a certain culture there of, you know, yeah, games used to be good before ... And, you know, there's no argument with taste, right? It's like one of the oldest and probably one of the fairest theories of aesthetics almost. But, you know, I guess the thing I would say is that I think Julian Gollop is a very, very talented game designer. And I really respect the XCOM games. I imagine, through revealed preferences, I like the Firaxis version of XCOM considerably more than the original. And that's not to deny the status of XCOM as a classic. It's very rightly earned that name. But I'm also fully conscious of the fact that when I played the original XCOM, you know, we can maybe have a reasonable debate about whether or not it's fun to have a team member who literally steps off the plane and a laser beam from an unknown place in the map one-shots them, right? And like, I will fully grant that can actually be enjoyable in its own way, right? The same reason that people like From Software games or Rust, or like Rust isn't my cup of tea, but like there are definitely people who like that level of punishment in a game. But it is considerably harder for me to defend something like the AI playing to win so hard that when it realizes it's outmatched, when there's like a single sectoid left on the map, it will genuinely run to all of the shadowy places it can to hide from you. There is no way that it is going to win. But because the game is so intent on trying to win, it will actually force you to spread out and chase down this one enemy so that you can finally clear the map. And I think, you know, because Microprose made those kinds of mistakes early on and people played it and they say, you know what, I really like, I mean, there's so many great games, right, that have their origins in, I really like ... but I wish it didn't do X. And then we get progress, then we get something enjoyable out of that. And sometimes it's through accident, right? So Disco Elysium was supposed to have combat at some point, but it's known very well for being a combatless RPG, and it inspired a lot of consideration in terms of what you have to have in order to be a CRPG. And I say this because, you know, I do a lot of the Weather Factory games, Cult of Simulator and Book of Hours, and one of the reasons they're doing a CRPG themselves is because they reflected on what sort of Disco Elysium seemed to enable. And that's not necessarily having any particular reverence for Disco Elysium so much as the idea of asking some useful questions about what's important for a gaming experience like that. So yeah, it's, you know, I get it. I always sort of get the sense of nostalgia. It's the same thing with movies, right? Like, I think any fair accounting of movies, while I have a particular love for, you know, older movies, something, you know, around the 70s is actually, 60s and 70s is a good time. So like The Graduate or The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, you know, even earlier than that. So some of Ingmar Bergman's stuff, you know, both foreign and Hollywood films. There's really wonderful movie. I can't remember if I mentioned The Graduate or not, but that's, you know, like those are great movies. But, you know, between Apple TV Plus, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, there's tons and tons of really good stuff coming out if you look for it. Even if you don't like the Marvel stuff. Like, I don't watch a lot of Marvel stuff. Coworkers finally made me watch the Avengers. But you know, there's great stuff if you take the time to look. But as you rightly point out, you know, I've had, on going back to Dark Souls, I have a theory that everyone's favorite Dark Souls and their opinion of the best Dark Souls is the first one that they play. So if you start the series with Dark Souls, you think Dark Souls is the best one. If you started with Dark Souls 2, right, you think that's the best one. And I do know some people who believe that. And it's so obviously what you talked about, which is it's the first time you play a game like that. And there's never really going to be an experience like that where you have such a fresh new perspective on what gaming can be. And it's actually probably not a good idea to try and recapture that so much as just to sort of see with fresh eyes and enjoy some of the variations on what you see. Yeah, see, and that's just it. Like, I only just got a console when the Series X finally came out. So now I have a Switch and a Series X. But so even then I don't get a chance to play Demon's Souls because I don't have a PlayStation. But I did finally play Demon's Souls on a at a local bar which had it. And it's fine. Like, I enjoy it. But obviously I have the benefit of a lot of things that Dark Souls did after Demon's Souls that really made that a more successful game. And of course, now Elden Ring, right? That's the one that seems to just be, you know, really killing it in terms of the critical acclaim and sales. So I think revealed preferences are such that's probably the best iteration of that style. But I also know that that's heresy to a certain type of gamer. But in the end, also, I sometimes question whether there's value in.
People hold up.
You know, sometimes there's a question as to whether or not there's any value in like ranking those things, right? Like, I don't necessarily feel a need to. I think that drawing the comparison in terms of how a game deals with a certain idea, I think is really interesting. I think just doing the comparison for the sake of saying that, just to give an absurd example, Baldur's Gate 3 is like 2 Fallouts better than Divinity Original Sin 2. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what are we really establishing here, right? Like, as opposed to something like maybe, hey, did you like Fallout? Do you want something that looks a little more modern? Maybe try this Pillars of Eternity game, or try this Tyranny game. It's kind of the same idea, right? Or maybe a tabletop player. It's like, hey, did you like playing Shadowrun? Do you like William Gibson crossed with J.R.R. Tolkien? Try those Shadowrun games. They're by the same people who founded FASA. I find that a much more useful kind of comparison, just because in the end it's grounded in the main goal of enjoying the stuff that you're playing. By the way, I love the Shadowrun adaptations. I think if you're gonna play one, you definitely want to do Dragonfall or Hong Kong. But if you're gonna play all three, You kind of have to start with Returns because they just kept getting better.
Here in the old walls? Do they think the Bane kinder than the chorus?
Oh, it's great. Outsiders, run! So yeah, it's a question. The combat's quite different from this. So combat would be a little bit closer to sort of turn-based tactical, like an XCOM. Sorry, I'm talking about XCOM too much. Yeah, the only real drawback with Shadowrun Returns is that it is a relatively small game, right? That was a Kickstarter. I believe Harebrained Schemes had done at least one game before, but it was an iOS game called Crimson Steam Pirates. It was actually kind of made on a bet with Bungie, of all people. And again, it's fine as an RPG. It's a nice, tidy little game. Yeah. So you may actually quite like Shadowrun Returns. But the real problem is that Shadowrun Dragonfall was originally intended to be a DLC for Shadowrun Returns, and it just became so big. It's like the DLC that ate the game that it now has its own sort of standalone director's cut. And like as far as a story goes and just the possibilities that open, absolutely fantastic. Like I could not give a stronger recommendation for Dragonfall. But the drawback, of course, is because you set such a high bar. If you're like, oh, I really love Dragonfall, I want to know what inspired it, let me go back to Returns. It's like, this is missing all the stuff that I really liked. And again, if you just want to play one, then Hong Kong might be the one to play because they really improved the Matrix mechanics. But yeah, I don't know. I think playing them in order is fine, and they're good. It's just I think if you really like the depth of RPGs in that, I feel that Dragonfall is really where they hit their stride. Never played Dungeon Siege. The Fatebinder. How did you... welcome. Fatebinder, good day to you. The young man greets you with a smile as distant shouts reverberate through the area, steadily growing in volume. As you might have observed, your presence comes as a bit of a surprise. It's an unexpected pleasure, to receive an esteemed servant of the court. He bows stiffly, revealing a row of multi-shaped quills along his back. Sage Lantry, what are you doing here?
I could ask the very same of you. Taking shelter in the old walls, that takes nerves of iron, or wits of stone.
To squat in the old walls? It is a wonder the Bane have not rewarded their hubris with a painful death.
Well, this is unexpected. Though I'm glad to see you alive, my young friend. I'm not here to reminisce. I'm with the Fatebinder now, so I'll need to insist that you start explaining whatever it is you're doing here.
I'm Scribe Mel of the Vellum Citadel, or formerly of, I suppose I should say. You aren't here to... Kairos doesn't have another edict in store for us, does he? He taps a long quill against his thigh, its feather plume flutting nervously in return. I figure if that was the case, I'd be waist deep in lava as we speak. Sage concludes with a half-hearted chuckle that tapers into terrified silence. What is this place? I struggle with a definition myself, truthfully. We call this place Bastard's Wound, or just The Wound for short. It's a refuge of sorts, a haven for folks displaced by war and poor decision-making. Everyone that's here discovered this place by chance, but remains by choice. The decor is unorthodox, to be sure, but it does come with the benefit of extreme seclusion. So I think this is DLC that was made after the fact. Not that we object to the court's presence or that of the Archons. We simply thought it best to unburden you with all the weight of governance. I know you have better things to do than check up on us. We're fine, really. Everything is fine. You look past the scribe, taking note of the details in the cavernous area. Giant stone walls flank the space and ascend to an open sky, seemingly shorn apart from one another. Thunderous waterfalls cascade down, nearly ringing the stone-tiled islands that comprise the settlement. Though covered by damp moss and man-made tents, the stone architecture here is unmistakably of the old walls. What's all the commotion about? Visitors are always a cause for alarm. Moreover, you aren't just any outsider. You're a Fatebinder. To many, it's as if Tunon has just strolled into our homes. Your dispensation of justice could have profound ramifications for a little-known and technically hidden settlement such as ours. Some of the refugees here don't know your intentions. No doubt they have little to fear, right? Why are you all here? Entry into the old walls is forbidden. Yeah, this is one of the negative side effects or the costs of opening the channel here, Ron. But I mean, it's one of the bits of enjoyment for me. Certainly, is the ability to run into interesting people on Twitch and hear people's views. If you don't mind, what kind of writing do you do? If you prefer that to keep that as a private interest, I completely understand. But I do a lot more writing at work now, and I'm part of a writers group at work, so I can't hear that somebody does writing and not ask about it. Why are you all here? Entry into the old walls is forbidden. Ah, of course. I can see why things might appear that way. He stammers, running his hands clumsily over the scrolls along his bandolier. He snatches one from its loop and taps at it nervously. If you look at this drawing of the area, we are, by way of several fathoms, below the old walls you see rising up. So who's to say if we're in the walls or really just underground? I mean, other than the Fatebinder, of course. I merely mean to suggest that there's some potential ambiguity as to whether we've really done anything wrong. I'm not here to condemn this settlement. No, actually, let's examine the parchment first. Sketched upon the crumpled parchment is a cross-section of what appears to be old walls running through the mountainous region of the Bastard Tier. If this map is accurate, these old walls run almost entirely under the mountains. The upper reaches of these old walls are just a few stories above the valley floor. Judging from the map, the old wall slopes upward as it travels north, and slopes downward as it heads south. I'm not here to condemn this settlement. Yet. Thank you, Fatebinder. I heard that you gave warning to the sages at the Vellum Citadel before the edict came. I'm glad to see that your mercy extends to us as well. Things here are complicated. I will merely say that this is an unusual place, and its legal standing somewhat unclear. We would never knowingly violate Kairos' law, is what I mean. We appreciate your generosity, Fatebinder. I hope that you will come to appreciate the wound in time. No doubt you have many questions for us. I shall do my best to acquaint you with this outpost. Is there anything I can help you with? Soren's working on a tabletop play system, something you've done for many years. You're doing it in conjunction with your own fantasy world and such. That's really cool. It's I never quite appreciated so to me, I definitely feel like I'd like to do more role playing than I actually do. It's not always easy to get a group of people together. If in my lesser moments or my more sarcastic moments, I always like to say that tabletop role playing is discrimination against the lonely. But it's funny because I've also had very limited view on sort of the available world. So like I guess I'm trying to think of things that I've either played or like had the option to play, and it's like the White Wolf stuff, Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, and Shadowrun. And then when I started doing some work on my own account, I mean, obviously there's like some bigger ones that I'm just missing out of that for either lack of opportunity or knowledge or whatever. So like Call of Cthulhu would be a big example of that. But the one that probably got my attention the most when I started looking into it was Traveler. And I still actually think there's a lot of interesting stuff waiting in Traveler, and probably that there's an unacknowledged debt to a lot of the stuff that we really enjoy. But one of the big things that I didn't appreciate about kind of modern tabletop is just how many different settings there are. In fact, some things that I've enjoyed as digital games are, have their basis in sort of, if not a homebrew RPG, at least one that I'm less familiar with. And how common it is for people to actually develop their own systems, or at the very least adapt their own systems and use those as an opportunity to make their own worlds. So I think that's really neat. Obviously, just because there's other... once upon a time, I can imagine that people would sort of sit down with a piece of paper and engage in, quote unquote, world building. But to see it put towards like creating an experience that other people will be enjoying, I like that, right? Because in the end, we never really get to play ideas, we get to play implementations. And so if people just stay in that world building stage and don't either turn it into a story of some kind or a gameplay system, then it just sort of remains in the head of the person creating it, which can be very enjoyable for the individual. But obviously, I wouldn't be streaming and enjoying something right now if people didn't take the time and the effort and the risk, ultimately, to create a realized world. Okay, I don't know if I want to go straight into the missive about Sage L or not, so I have questions about the wound and its history. The analysis and creation of historical documents was one of the chief areas of focus at the Citadel, and I have had enough time to acquaint myself with the particulars of this place, so I suppose I'm the person to ask. What would you like to know? How did everyone get here? This place was discovered 3 years ago by braver and more adventurous souls than Master Lexiem and I. We're relative newcomers, going on about a year at this point. When Caird smashed Rostrum Vorus Manor, his supporters fled into the cracked mountainside and discovered this place. At the same time, life here with the Bane sounded better than life at war with the Archons. From there, the settlement grew in spurts. We are far off the beaten path, so visitors are rare, but the few we've gotten have often made this place home. You're paging through the collector's edition of the Pillars of Eternity walkthrough guide, a Kickstarter exclusive, and that showed up at a... Oh, neat. I got... I'm not in Vancouver anymore, but It's kind of funny that in Vancouver I had like 2 used bookstores I'd constantly go to. So I kind of know the feeling of having your place. You're paging through the collector's edition, and you're reading it, you're like, this is just a damn game written out with screenshots to supplement. So it's like, I need to do exactly this to make my world and game real. No, that's really cool. One of the reasons why I say that is I'm actually really bad in terms of doing this myself. When I was working in film, I found it was a lot more natural for me to make to make works of nonfiction. They'd usually be screenplays just because, you work with what you're familiar with. If you have sides in your pocket every day and you're just familiar looking through the form. And, I worked in camera, right? So I just have a natural way of sort of thinking visually, which means either I'm not doing narrative, I'm doing photography. And if I want to work with narratives, and I like narratives, then that's going to mean screenplay, right? It's probably the most visual way of doing a narrative. So, but I've been out of that for a while, right? I've gone to university and have like a real job now. And I find, oddly enough, that while I still enjoy spinning a good yarn and I certainly have ideas for things. It's not as natural for me to try and write a story now. I will very often write an essay or some form of nonfiction. So, I kind of like to think that I do have a book in me, but I think it would be much more likely for me to do a book on a subject as opposed to a work of imagination. And I have some ideas in terms of why that is. But there is that small ambition. I want to read some more short stories, for instance, to maybe see if it's perhaps just a question of familiarity. But what I do find the most interesting is that because I do like hanging out in writers groups, and I do like talking with friends who are writers, and some of them are just people who have ambitions for writing. I do often find, a bit like what we're talking about here, that they spend a lot of time in the world building phase. And to a certain extent, that's good because we all, it's like an intellectual equivalent of having model trains, right? How we want to spend our leisure time, we spend that doing things that we enjoy. But in some cases, this isn't quite exactly writing, right? And I sometimes get an appreciation that I feel that some of the lack of progress, I've got some people who have been allegedly working for years on just getting, the setting and the ideas right. And, it's not really my place to say whether or not they're doing it right. I don't think there's anybody who can really say that with certainty. But especially when I've tried to do even something like a short story, I sometimes forget how hard it is sometimes, particularly when you have vague ideas of something that you feel is important, but you don't quite have the full direction for it. And especially that first draft where you just know deep down it's probably not going to be what you had in mind. Like, not all of us are so like I think there's a couple of stories. Like, I think there's apparently a story where like Friedrich Forsyth, The Day of the Jackal was like his first work of fiction, and he banged it out in 34 days, and it was like basically done. But beyond, and like, here's the thing: I have no reason to doubt stories like that, right? I have definitely been in the zone sometimes, and like sometimes you really do a first draft where, Socrates' demon came upon you, and like, you moved something in you that you can't control, or however you want to try and like, however you want to try and rationalize that. But for the most part, it's work, right? And it's funny because I have, like, for my day-to-day work, because there's so much writing that I do now, I actually have a formula where, like, even if I don't feel like, creation's gift to the written word, I show up to work and I'll put those words in order. And if I'm really honest with myself, it's kind of hard to tell the days when I was feeling it and the days where I sort of had to force myself because I knew I have a deadline and so on and so forth. I think most outside observers wouldn't be able to tell you where the good days and the bad days were. And yet, as soon as I cross into writing for pleasure, the apartment needs to get clean. Or maybe I need to explore another idea. Or my favorite, right? Let's just do a little more research. Because that sounds like another better use of my leisure time. The reading, right? And all of a sudden, I'm not writing anymore. I'm reading. And reading's not a bad thing to do either. But, you make a much better analogy in this case. World building is just grabbing toys out of the toy chest and looking at them, sometimes going, I should add more to the toy chest. For sure, at the end of the day, the only thing that works is work. And I'm a little like, I know there's a couple of quotes. I'm trying to remember who it was who talks, I only write when I'm inspired. Fortunately, inspiration comes at exactly 9:00 when I sit down in front of my typewriter. I sometimes think some of those lines are, again, I can't know what's in someone's mind, but to me, it always has that little bit of a ring of the sort of thing that someone says, and they say it as a quote, one, because it's a pretty good quote, but number two, they say it because it projects an air of confidence where they hope if they say it enough times, then maybe it will become true. So I'm sympathetic enough to know, like, sometimes you really do need to drag it out of yourself. And in some cases, it's actually just an acknowledgement that it's not going to be what you want or what you had in mind, but it's a necessary intermediate step towards achieving the thing that you want. And it's funny too, because I do actually find the process of writing very enjoyable. But I do sometimes find that intermediate place of having a broad idea of a destination, but knowing that those intermediate places, like trying to, I've got starting point A and I've got, destination B, but knowing that the middle points aren't quite lining up, that they're not really working for me. Those are the ones I actually find the hardest, because to a certain extent I want to perfect them, but I also know that sometimes that perfection is going to come by sort of writing out the material and then sort of realizing the problem and being able to fix it. It's actually one of the reasons I really like going into writers groups, because I found there's a very high proportion of times where people will talk about something they're working on, and like immediately, I'll just say it's like, oh, well, this is a fun spin on it. And like, you just immediately see the look of recognition on someone's face. And like, it's like they've seen a saint or something. Like they had a vision, and like, maybe even it's not even necessarily the thing I suggested, but like all of a sudden something like locked into place, and like, that they're going to go and write something they're really happy with. So the funny thing is that comes quite naturally. And I know that comes naturally because I have the benefit of seeing all the pieces in place and just sort of seeing where that missing link is, or just to sort of see how the parts aren't quite lining up. And yet, despite seeing that when it's someone else's work, I always have that trouble of knowing that, sometimes just getting that out in place so you can kind of see the misshapen parts and you can work on them. It's still one of those things I find very difficult to realize, just because, I don't know, like I don't want to admit that it's bad, even though I know that admitting it's bad is the path to the good stuff. So maybe I just need to have some sort of fugue state where I don't think I'm myself, and I just get it all written out. Yeah, no, it's I do, one of my previous jobs was an economist. I mean, I still consider myself an economist. It's just not my job title anymore. There's quite a bit on the economics of creativity, and there's a lot of different ways that you can study that, right? You can look at that in terms of systems. So, there are certain companies and industries which effectively thrive on the idea of having some kind of repeatable process through which selecting and hiring people who are able to bring it day in and day out. But then there's also just that individual, right? How is it that we create sort of works of the mind and things that are fun distractions? And again, because it's a social science, like, you don't necessarily have to limit yourself just to dollars and cents. It's just a formal way of it. I mean, to a certain extent, it's almost applied psychology. And even with that limited lens, there is a lot to unpack. All right, sorry, I will jump out. I am probably going to need a break at some point, but let's finish our conversation with Mel, and I'll try and have a short break, and then we can wrap up for the night. Not every encounter with the outside has been positive. When some disfavored found us, things got ugly fast, but the bloodshed was limited, and the survivors joined us in the end, if a bit reluctantly. What do you know about this place? A remarkable place, is it not? He stretches his arms apart, looking around for emphasis. We have no idea how this old corner of the old walls happens to be, but the tunnel leading to it came into being just a few years ago. Cairn's fury was unleashed in the battle on the top side, and whatever powers he used split under the mountains and fractured these old walls. He points upward, past the crashing waterfalls, and towards the exposed sky. The divided walls flare outward, a giant maw stretched towards the firmament. Crack the whole damn old walls in half, and now sunlight and water are here for the first time since ever. Makes me wonder if there are other old walls like this that are hidden from view to those of us just walking the surface. How do you survive in this place? What do you eat? We get enough sunlight to cultivate crops on the upper levels: cabbage, nash root, radishes, mushrooms even. The biggest challenge here is drinking water, despite appearances. He leans forward while speaking, his tone energetic. It's a rather interesting phenomenon, actually. Something in these old walls' environment leaches into the water and corrupts it, producing a most curious disease in the afflicted. There's no fever or chills, bleeding or vomiting or what have you, but you will waste away over time, as if one were starving. Tidecaster Wagstaff devised a method to magically treat the water, rendering it safe to consume, and with curative properties for those already sick. The solution is a bit slow at making large amounts, but fortunately Jaspos constructed some stone aquifers. Water poured into these aquifers will drain in a few hours later and emerge purified. Between their contributions, we're able to make the wound a proper home, so long as the two keep their squabbling to a minimum. Did the Bane not threaten you? He nods, absent-mindedly rubbing the dried ink between his fingers. Yes, of course, but we have a system for that. You've met our greeting party in the caves, I take it. Incidentally, what happened to... He shakes his head, dismissing the thought. Doesn't matter. The point is, we had a contingent of beastmen with us, and they've adapted exceedingly well to the old walls and show little fear of the abominations. They've been perfectly eager to dig their claws into any that come our way. It's surprising that it even works. By the way, but who am I to argue? At any rate, they keep the entry points to the wound clear, and seem content to keep doing so. In fact, I dare say some of them have come to love hunting the Bane, or just have a death wish, and that's why they volunteer for patrol day after day. Let's speak of other matters. Is there anything I can help you with? What do you do here? What don't I do? Someone has to inventory the supplies, take census, ledger trades. It's all pretty unexciting, I assure you. I happen to like playing steward. Balancing numbers is easy for me, and I have far more responsibilities than I ever did as a mere scribe at the Citadel. Aren't you a bit young for a sage? If I were a tenured sage, that may well be true, but I'm just an apprentice. Many in the guild scribe for decades before attaining rank. As the school is no more, I suppose I'll never officially be counted among the sages, but I'm making my contributions to knowledge in my own ways. My master thinks similarly, though I think the loss of the school means more to her. I had a few years to know the other sages. She had a few decades. Where is your master? Master Lexime is sadly not amongst us. She vanished into the lower levels some time ago. She wasn't herself. He furrows his brow, visibly distressed. Life here is rather complicated, and the old walls bless us with numerous mysteries. One of those is unending sleeplessness, an affliction that drove her mad. Lexime? She's alive? So she survived the Edict of Fire? Lantry's eyes widen with surprise. You hear the clinking of vials as his entire body trembles. He gave the sages fair warning. Glad to know someone listened. Lexime and I go way back. She joined the school a year before I did, so we more or less ran the paces together. If she's alive, why didn't she try to find me? Did you try to contact all the other sages you thought were alive? Right. Well, we tried not to cloud the skies with missive birds. That would just give the enemy something to follow. Like me, she probably tried to avoid detection, not light a signal fire. Were you two rivals or friends? Both? We were chroniclers, so there was a competition of sorts, but I think I'm allowed to say that we got along well enough. Not that many of my friendships survived my politics. I was in favor of surrendering the school to Kairos. Hardly a popular outlook. Last I know, she went into the depths of the old walls. To me, that's a death sentence, especially if she's no longer able to work her magic. I'm so sorry. I wish you'd stumbled upon us sooner. Maybe you could have reconnected with her. Her mind was dwindling, and I know she was fixated on making sure everything she carried out of the Vellum Citadel was hidden and safe. She and I hid one such cache over by the farm. The others are, I presume, deeper in the old walls. Lexime knew an old sage trick that conceals the stashes, making them fade from view unless another chronicler stands near. When her magic began fading, she made a rush to conceal things, but aside from one stash in the farm, only she knows where the rest lay. Who's in charge here? Unfortunately, that's a matter of debate at the moment. For a while, two men in particular led this settlement. Tidecaster Wagstaff, who has been here the longest, and Forgebound Master Jaspos. They made it possible to survive here, but rarely see things eye to eye. Were the conditions here not so fragile, I'm certain they would have come to blows ages ago. There's also a beast woman, Reef Talon. Really quite a remarkable creature, actually. She held this place together and kept tempers at bay until fairly recently. She was worthy a leader as we've ever seen in the Wound, but she's no longer with us, so the bickering between Jaspos and Wagstaff continues. Tell me about Jaspos. Look for the broad-shouldered man with the booming voice. He's almost always taking out his frustration on some poor rock or boulder just there by his forge. He points northwest towards a plume of smoke rising above the surrounding walls. Jaspos and his two apprentices arrived sometime after Wagstaff. I think we worried he'd be a true loyalist and demand we surrender to Kairos, but he's taken a shine to this place and is trying to create his own little corner of Terratus. I think he likes the seclusion and being surrounded by a variety of rock types. He built most of the bridges you see here, some cisterns to filter water. He's a one-man work crew, and he knows it, unfortunately. He has more than a few supporters, particularly since he created those purifying aquifers. The water here causes illness, and without his help, most of us wouldn't have enough clean water to drink. I'd like to know more about Wagstaff. He chuckles, his lips pressed together in a slight, knowing smile. Prickly old fellow, Wagstaff. One of the last tidecasters in the tiers, I believe. His eyes widen in sudden realization. His kind were enemies to Kairos, true, but I'm certain he has no personal designs against the Overlord Fatebinder. He's not one for pleasantries or charisma of any sort, but he is a master of his craft. He was the first to treat the toxic waters here in the old walls, and to date, it's the only cure that works. The Wound would be in bad shape without him. Give him some time, and you might see beyond the gruff exterior. Just know that he prefers the solitude of his pool, so don't head over there unless you're willing to suffer his glare. A beast woman was in charge. That is a bit unusual. Indeed, but Reef Talon is a most unusual beast. She's a lot more focused, patient, and sensible than all the other beasts I've encountered. Anyway, Reef Talon was able to organize beasts and humans into effective patrols against the Bane. With her in charge of defense, casualties dropped. No Bane ever slipped into the common area, and disputes between beasts all but disappeared. At a certain point, it seemed foolish not to have her in charge. We've had a few beastmen wander into our refuge, I don't know how or why, but life here changes them. I don't know if it's the Bane, something in the water, something about the magics in this place. After a span or two living with us, most beastmen just seem to become a bit more civilized, relaxed. Maybe speak to some of our beastmen. Perhaps you'll agree. What happened to Reef Talon? Reef Talon was our bulwark against not only the Bane, but death itself. She had a mystic gift, or so we thought. Her touch brought everyone, the wounded, the sick, the dying, back from the edge. But it changed them. The curse wasn't noticeable at first, but seemingly without fail, those healed would slowly but surely stop sleeping. A minor malady at first, but a cumulative one. As days and weeks go on, they lose themselves. Depression, malaise, paranoia, unending unto itself. My master Lexime was treated by Reef Talon, and in her case she lost her ability to work magic. Between this and some disputes about whether it's proper for a beast woman to lead humans, it resulted in Reef Talon leaving the Wound, disappearing into the depths of the old walls. Many of the Sleepless followed. Sleepless that left haven't returned, so it's hard to be optimistic about any of this. That's an unusual power. Can't say I've ever heard of a Beastman mystic that does such things. I regret not being a better student of Beastman magics, but I concur. This is most unusual. What's stranger still, Reef Talon did not boast about being a mystic, and beasts are nothing if not boastful. I have a hypothesis. Perhaps she slew so many Bane that their sickly powers have soaked into her very touch. He shrugs, letting out a long sigh. But it's just speculation. All I know for sure is that scores of lives were inadvertently ruined by her healing gift, and folks here have some complicated feelings towards Reef Talon. He pauses in thought, nervously rolling a quill between his fingers. None have recovered, unfortunately. The end result appears to be inevitable. Still, I can't help but wonder if Reef Talon could have corrected this. It's a shame. You should know, Fatebinder, that there are a small number of people who have been treated by Reef Talon but haven't fully lost their grip on things. Jaspo's apprentice, Isley, for one. It is, though, just a matter of time until the worst sets in. Let's speak of other matters. Is there anything else I can help you with? Farewell. Very well, Fatebinder. If you haven't done so yet, please speak with Jaspos or Wagstaff. The wound doesn't speak with a single voice, but these two come the closest to such a thing. As you turn to leave, you see Lantry lost in thought, rubbing his cerulean ink between his fingers and thumb. Guess one of your old friends is here. What should we expect? She's an old friend of mine. By now you've probably already detected the understatement in my voice, so ask your questions. An old love interest, I presume? You presume correctly. We were deeply intimate for the better part of 15 years. The school gave up long ago trying to make rules against fraternization, and, well, we took full advantage of living in the modern era of the School of Ink and Quill, when sages could do away with furtive copulation and the foolish attempts to curb the natural inclination of scholars to rust. It was her magic I loved the most. She was gifted, truly gifted. She could achieve these little accents on her spells that none of us could replicate. At first I had nothing but envy and hate for her. Somewhere along the line, it became adoration. I just hoped to Kairos that if it rubbed up against her enough, maybe some of her talent would rub off onto me. No such luck. What would you like to know? If you were so close, why didn't you flee the Citadel together? There was a time when we were inseparable. I learned much of my magic from her, and her from me. We were each other's mentor and student. It's a very special sort of bond. But it was a relationship that I fouled through my own convictions. In the years before Kairos' conquest, I urged our school to surrender, and urge is an understatement. Rabidly advocated would be a more apt description. Lexime did not share my assessment of Kairos or my opinions on what must be done. I was in the dissenting minority. Most felt I was a traitor, Lexime included. But I wasn't about to back off from my belief that surrender was the right idea. Considering what came to pass, I feel justified in my stance. While I normally adore being right about things, in this particular case my tumescent smugness maybe isn't worth the friendships it all cost me. What do you make of her condition? From the sound of it, she was afflicted with sleeplessness, and by all accounts madness would naturally follow. But if she's down in the old walls and enfeebled, she'd be easy prey for the Bane. Heard of anything like this before? Well, there are all manner of magics that kill a person slowly. Where to begin? I'm more perplexed that she, and by the sound of it others too, were first healed and then grew ill. So you two worked on the Chronicle together. We are but two members of a team spanning generations, but yes, we both contributed to the Chronicles. Long bouts of field work and longer stretches of authoring our findings suited our temperaments. My colleagues insisted original research was the way to make a name for myself, but the accounting of everything is a cause greater than us all. Lexime saw the Chronicle as half record of things that were, and half record of how things ought to be. To her, each moment we record offers universal insights into how people will act in the future. I take the more modest stance that you can't stand in the same river twice, and the same general can't fight the same war twice, so history is of limited predictive power. Forgive me, you didn't ask for the nuances of our philosophical debates. What do you make of these chronicle fragments she tasked us to find? My heart sings every time I can safeguard a text against destruction. Still, there's something bothering me about these writings. Let's look around a bit more, shall we? Ask me again when I have a few pieces to compare. Alright, I'm just going to let the tickers run by. The ones who got away. Right. This may not actually be a bad place to finish for tonight. So I think what I'll do here, like I said, I'll let this run through, and then I don't see a whole lot of point in taking a break at this point. But this is obviously a fairly big area, so I don't think it would hurt to... I don't know. We'll see what we can do. So first of all, Truth and Reconciliation, Chronicles of the School of Ink and Quill have been hidden deep within the Bastard's Wound old walls. Help Lantry find and reassemble them. Find the Bastard's Wound Farm Chronicle. Mel said the first chronicle was hidden in the Bastard's Wound farm area. Search the farm with Lantry present to find it. And the ones who got away, you have come across a collective of refugees inside the old walls. Investigate the situation before determining how you want to proceed. Oh, Rung says, it was great hanging out here for a bit. Time for bed. I will be back. Look forward to the next time. Well, thank you very much. I probably will be doing Tyranny at the very least Mondays and Wednesdays, probably most Fridays as well. And it's next Wednesday, I have a local game dev meetup to attend. But other than that, I should be on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Thank you for being such a pleasure to hang out with, and you probably aren't going to miss that much because I'm probably going to go to bed soon myself anyway, or at the very least stop streaming and then do all the other stuff that I want. But best of luck with the writing that I probably distracted you from. Have a good sleep, and we'll see you in the next one, whenever that is. You've come across a collective of refugees inside the old walls. Investigate the situation before determining how you want to proceed. Speak with Japsos, Master of Napping. For sure, yeah, we can chat about that when there's well, I mean, if nothing else, on the Friday following I can talk about all the stuff that was there. Yeah, have a good one. Forge Brown Master Japsos can be found northeast of his forge in the northern part of Bastard's Wound, and Tidecaster Wagstaff can be found in the southeast corner of Bastard's Wound, just beyond where the Scarlet Chorus are camped. Extinguishing the Flames, again, that's going to be the Burning Library. I think that's probably main quest, so we won't worry about that. And then Trial of the Archons is always going to be around there, so... Alright, now I was not expecting... Yeah, so it looks like there's 1, 2, 3... Oh, it's just a domicile. Okay. Please speak to Master Japsos at the Forge before pronouncing any verdicts.
Sure, let's just set up a little village in the old walls. Why not?
Fateminder ain't no Archon. We'll draw bronze if you force us. Fateminder, gracious, how did you come? Did you come for? You'll want to speak to Master Japsos. He's northeast of here in the Forge. Pad soft human. Woundkin watch always. Woundkin smell all. Okay, yeah. So there's actually quite a bit to investigate here. So I think I'm gonna save it here. What I am gonna do though, I'm gonna take a quick minute just because I know we're in Bastard's Wound. There's a couple of signals in terms of the DLC. So yeah, Tales from the Tears is currently installed, and Bastard's Wound. So if I, sorry to interrupt the music, if I go to the store page, so Tyranny, experience a story-driven RPG where your choices mean all the difference in the world. Wow, that is a really thin description on Steam. So for Tyranny itself, play an RPG with meaningful world-altering choices, unique and memorable companions, and a new perspective on morality. Tyranny casts you as the arbiter of law in a world devastated by war and conquered by a despot. Will you work inside the system or try to dismantle it? And will it be for the glory of Kairos, for the good of the world, or for your own ambition? From Obsidian Entertainment, the team behind Pillars of Eternity, Fallout New Vegas, and South Park: The Stick of Truth, Tyranny is a classic-styled RPG with a new and original story, shaped and molded by your actions. The very layout of the world will be altered by your decisions as you choose sides, make allies and enemies, and fight for your own vision of law and order in an immersive and reactive story. Main features: branching, unique stories in an original setting. In a realm where the tyrant has already won, the player must decide how to reshape the world, strengthen the pillars of a new regime, or search for more power at the top of a new order. Choices matter. Make world-altering decisions with far-reaching consequence. As a Fatebinder in the Overlord's army, you wield a vast amount of power in the occupied lands of the Tiers. Will you use that to inspire stability and loyalty, or will you try and offer a better way? Challenging classical RPG combat, tactical real-time with pause combat with new party-driven mechanics and modern presentation. In a rich original setting, Tyranny turns the archetypal RPG story on its head and allows players to explore a new take on good and evil. The player is not a random villager who rises to power, but an instrumental officer with considerable resources and authority. Use that power to enforce the new status quo, or try and make a change from the inside. So, Tales from the Tiers. Tales from the Tiers expands your journey through the war-torn world of award-winning role-playing game Tyranny, with new travel map events, encounters, and side stories. Outwit hostile ambushes, patronize or plunder traveling merchants, and use your skills to navigate the perils of a land plagued by magical edicts in a series of episodes that offer new insights, new items, and new challenges on your journey. Whether you're new to Tyranny or playing an existing save game, Tales from the Tiers lets you take an even deeper dive into the saga of Tyranny. Alongside Tales from the Tiers, Paradox Interactive is proud to announce a free update for all Tyranny owners, which includes more ways for players to explore the game's many events and outcomes. Features from Tales of the Tiers. New travel events, random encounters while traveling may lead to new quests or new events focused on companions and new NPCs. Expanded story, learn more about the people and places of the Tiers with more than 40 vignettes to encounter on your journey. New items, find over a dozen new items and countless new ways to gain loyalty and fear with your companions in the factions of Tyranny, and more replay options. A free patch adds a new Game Plus mode and a character respec option for an easier way to explore other plot lines. I'm not going to lie, $10 for travel events? I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I already own it, but I'm not really sure how I feel about that as an option. And Bastard's Wound, the other DLC. Content requires base game of Tyranny on Steam in order to play. Ooh, mixed review. Experience a new chapter of Tyranny, the critically acclaimed role-playing game, RPG, in Bastard's Wound, a new expansion that builds upon the game's compelling story. Tyranny, an original RPG from Obsidian Entertainment, invites the player to make their mark on a world conquered by evil, and the Bastard's Wound expansion opens up a new area of the Tiers where refugees from the war-torn world have established a haven in secret. Delve deeper into the mysteries of Terratus as you bring Kairos' justice, or your own version of it, to a new corner of the Tiers. In addition to the new region, Bastard's Wound gives you a chance to learn more about your party in a trio of companion quests featuring Lantry, Verse, and Barrack. A refuge from Kairos. Bastard's Wound will feature a refuge from Kairos. Players will explore an all-new section of the world centered around an illegal settlement of those who have fled the devastation of the war. What sentence will you mete out to the refugees? Companion quests. Learn more about Verse, Barrack, and Lantry in new quests and interactions to earn their loyalty or enmity. What does Barrack truly look like under his armor? Loyalty and service. Bastard's Wound will arrive alongside free updates to Tyranny, including new voice acting, expanded content in the game's third act, and an all-new path to an unseen ending. What fate awaits those who remain truly loyal to Kairos? I'm curious why it's got this mixed review. Added character quest should have been in the base game. Okay, Steam is not useful for reviews. Fair enough. I'm not really sure I learned all that much looking into it, but now we know. So yeah, I'll spend some time in Bastard's Wound to see what's going on. But I'm going to find someone online tonight, assuming we have someone. We've got Kilgore Trout online, and he is playing Shivers, which I've never heard of. Apparently it's a game for someone's birthday. But yeah, I will be back on Monday. So just a reminder for how the week's going to go for next week. I'm still trying to work out exactly what time I can sort of start and finish. So the hope is always to start between 7 or 8 in the evening, Eastern time. I very rarely do that, it feels like. So I will do my best, but until I find a little bit more balance with work, I'm going to have to do my best with what I've got here. But again, the difference for next week is on Wednesday, I will be at the local meetup. So there will be a stream on Monday. There will be a stream on Friday. But then the following week, I should be back to the regular Monday, Wednesday, and Friday broadcast schedule. And at the moment, I'm definitely inclined to doing more Tyranny. So we'll stick with that. If it feels like we've got a long time left with Tyranny, I might try and add a little bit more, maybe do Cyberpunk on Fridays or something like that. But I'm having enough of a good time with this game, and I feel like we're making some progress that I can see myself sort of focusing on this for a bit longer. Anyways, please enjoy Kilgore's channel. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you Monday. Take care.